The moving boxes were still a fortress in the living room, but from the kitchen window, Leo's new world was already defined by a single, strange sight: a girl, perfectly still under the gnarled oak tree in the backyard, staring intently at a dark knot in the bark as if listening to a secret. His father, bustling in with cheerful obliviousness, called her a ready-made friend and nudged him outside, but Leo hesitated, unnerved by her absolute stillness. The oak was a giant, ancient thing, its branches like twisted, grasping arms casting a pool of shade that seemed colder than the rest of the sunny lawn. Driven by a nervous curiosity stronger than his fear, Leo finally pushed the screen door open, the squeak of its spring sounding like a scream in the quiet afternoon. The girl didn't turn. Her name was Anabel, he would soon learn. She remained a statue, her wide, unblinking eyes fixed on the knothole, a dark, vertical gash in the trunk that looked disconcertingly like a half-closed eye. "Hello?" Leo said, his voice small. For a long moment, there was only the rustle of leaves. Then, without moving her head, she spoke in a hollow whisper that seemed to bypass the air and land directly in his bones. "This is Dole." Leo blinked. "Is that your brother or something?" A slow, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Dole is the tree. He's old. He's hungry. He can taste your fears if you stand too close." Her words were flat, a simple statement of fact that wove a chilling fantasy. Leo almost dismissed it as creepy kid nonsense, the kind of thing you said to scare the new boy. But then, a sudden, low creak groaned from a heavy branch directly above him. It was a sound of weight and strain, too deliberate to be the wind. Leo flinched, his eyes darting upward. When he looked back at Anabel, he saw the faint, knowing smile on her face, a tiny, cold curve of her lips that made his stomach clench. In that moment, he wondered if the scary thing wasn't the tree named Dole, but the girl who knew all its secrets. "That's stupid," Leo managed, trying to reclaim some bravery. "Trees can't taste anything." Anabel finally turned her head. Her eyes were a pale, watery green, and they held his with an intensity that made him want to look away. "He doesn't taste with a tongue. He tastes the air around you. When you're scared, it gets salty. He likes that." She took a step closer, her bare feet making no sound on the grass. "He says you taste like loneliness and new paint." A shiver, cold and sharp, traced its way down Leo's spine. How could she know about the paint? His mom had just painted his room a boring, neutral beige yesterday. He hadn't told anyone how much he hated it. "He's lying," Leo whispered. Anabel's smile didn't waver. "Dole doesn't lie. He listens. He's been listening for a very long time." She gestured to the knothole. "That's his ear. He hears all the secrets whispered in this yard. The ones from the kids who lived in your house before. The ones from the lady who lived here 100 years ago. He collects them." Over the next few days, Leo found himself drawn back to the tree, a moth to a dangerous flame. Anabel was always there, a silent priestess to this wooden god. she began to share dolls' stories. They weren't pleasant fairy tales. They were snippets of hidden lives, things a girl her age shouldn't know. She told him about the previous family's dog, Buster, who had gone to sleep under Doll's shade after eating something bad. She described the exact spot, near the roots, where the earth was softer. Leo's dad had casually mentioned a dog a few days prior, but not its name. Anabel knew its name. One afternoon, she pointed a thin finger at a high, forked branch. A boy climbed up there once. His name was Michael. He fell. Doll felt the crack. She mimicked the sound with a sickening pop of her tongue against her teeth. Leo didn't want to believe her, but the next day, he found an old, weathered baseball card wedged in that very fork, a player named Mike Schmidt. Coincidence, his rational mind screamed, but his gut churned with a cold dread. The line between Anabel's imagination and something more sinister began to blur. Leo started having nightmares, visions of roots creeping like black veins under his window, of the knothole opening into a deep, hungry throat. He woke up gasping, the taste of soil in his mouth. He noticed things, too. The family cat, Mittens, would arch its back and hiss at the oak tree before streaking away. The birds never nested in its branches. He tried to avoid the backyard, but it was as if the tree itself was pulling him. Anabel's prediction started to come true with unsettling accuracy. She told him his mother would receive a phone call that made her cry. That evening, his grandmother called with news of a sick relative. She said the mailman would trip on the curb. The next day, he did, scattering letters everywhere. "You see?" Anabel said softly, her hand resting on Doll's bark as if feeling a heartbeat. "He knows. He tastes the future in your fears." Leo finally broke. "Stop it! It's just a tree." For the first time, Anabel's placid expression fractured. A flicker of something like panic crossed her face. "Don't say that. You'll make him angry. When he's angry, he gets hungry." That night, a storm rolled in. Wind howled, and rain lashed against the windows. Leo lay in bed, listening to the fury outside. Above the gale, he heard a different sound, a deep, splintering crack. He ran to his window. In a flash of lightning, he saw it. One of Doll's massive limbs had torn away from the trunk and lay shattered across the lawn, missing his father's new car by inches. The next morning, the yard was a mess of leaves and twigs. Leah's dad was grumbling about the close call. Anabel was standing by the wreckage, her small hand on the torn, where would of the broken limb. Her shoulders were slumped. She looked up as Leo approached, and her eyes were red-rimmed. "He's hurt," she whispered, her voice thick with a grief that felt ancient. "He protected your house. He moved the branch." "He didn't move it, the wind broke it," Leo insisted, though a part of him was no longer sure. Anabel shook her head, a single tear tracing a path through the freckles on her cheek. "He's old. It hurt him to do it. Now he's weak. And when he's weak, he needs to be fed. Fed what? Leo asked, though he dreaded the answer. Anabel's gaze was unwavering. Stronger fears. Deeper secrets. Or he'll start taking things. Things we love. The air grew cold around them. Leo thought of Mittens, of his parents, of the terrifying emptiness of the knothole. He looked from Anabel's desperate, earnest face to the ancient, wounded tree. He finally understood the true nature of their bond. It wasn't that Anabel served dole. It was a symbiosis, a terrible, shared hunger. She was its voice, its interpreter, its keeper. And in return, it gave her a power, a purpose that set her apart from everyone else. She wasn't just a scary girl, she was the guardian of a dormant, ancient hunger, and she had just chosen Leo to be her successor, to share the burden and the power. He looked at the knothole, and for a fleeting second, he didn't see just a hole in a tree. He saw a gateway. And from within, he felt a pull, a whisper of a promise. It promised he would never be the lonely new kid again. It promised he would know all the secrets. Slowly, hesitantly, Leo took a step closer to the trunk. He looked at Anabel, who gave him a small, solemn nod. He raised his hand, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The bark felt rough and strangely warm against his palm. He leaned forward, toward the dark, listening ear of the tree, and took a deep breath, ready to whisper his first, most terrible secret.